Let's just look at the front pages of the papers today. New York Times talking about the two big stories, both about Israel. One, the attacks yesterday and the very fragile peace treaty, if you can call it that, actually ceasefire, and also the vague but chilling statement that Gaza should be, quote, cleaned out. Also down below, great story on how Kobe's image all over L.A. With art on the wall. But here, the Wall Street, we're dueling Wall Street journals. Hold that up, Mika. So Richard, look at the headlines here. Obviously, proposals to vacate Gaza stuns all sides, scrambles diplomacy. I would be shocked if we go there. I think it's just one of those things. It grabs headlines, but I find it very hard to believe that Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Jordan, Egypt, all of our Sunni Arab allies in the Middle East would go along with a cleaning out of where the Palestinian homeland one day should be.
Well, Joe, nobody in the Arab world, beginning with the Palestinians, but also the two countries that established peace with Israel first, Egypt and Jordan, both of them opposed this vehemently. Jordan's already 60 to 70% Palestinian. They would worry that any transfer of Palestinian populations would destabilize the monarchy in the country. Egypt lives on a knife edge because of its enormous population and its poverty. This just wouldn't be acceptable. No Palestinian would want it. The people who are celebrating here are the far right in Israel, these ministers who have been part of Bibi Netanyahu's government for most of the last few years, and the settler movement, because this is what they want. They want to see what's known as transfer, the pushing out of Palestinians, and therefore making Gaza, and even more important to them, the West Bank, what they call Judea and Samaria, open to Israeli settlement, to ultimately annexation. So I think this is a non-starter, Joe. What's interesting to me is, where did this come from? What does it tell us about the policy process of the new president that an idea that is so, I think, so much a non-starter and so potentially inconsistent with stability and peace in the region, where did this come from? Why was it being surfaced the way it was? And that's what I'd like to hear a little bit more about.
It's interesting because...
All right, let's go.
Joe, it's interesting because I was talking to somebody who ultimately ended up becoming a member of the cabinet, and he says a lot of the concepts are opening bids. Don't really know where this stands in that, but let's go live to Tel Aviv. We'll switch up our rundown this morning. NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez. Raf, what more do we know about this?
Well, Mika, this has been a dramatic and emotional weekend here in the Middle East, starting with those comments by President Trump made to reporters on Air Force One, suggesting that 1.5 million Palestinians in Gaza, that is 3/4 of the population, be moved so that the Strip can be, in his words, cleaned out. As you said, suggesting that they go to Egypt and Jordan. Immediate and very firm rejections by those two Arab allies of the United States, saying, as far as they are concerned, that is a total non-starter. Now, over the weekend here, those 4 young Israeli soldiers released from Hamas captivity after 477 days. Very emotional scenes as they were freed from Gaza. They were reunited with their families. We actually sat with the family of one of those soldiers, Liri Albag. She's second from the left in that photo. And we watched with them in real time this sort of surreal Hamas spectacle. Those 4 soldiers marched on stage in costume uniforms in front of the cameras, and then released into the hands of the Red Cross and handed back over to Israeli forces. Now, that all played out very much in public. What was going on in private over the weekend were absolute crisis talks, because this ceasefire was under real strain. And Hamas had not released an Israeli civilian called Arbel Yehud, who Israel says, under the terms of the agreement, should have been released ahead of those 4 soldiers. In response, Israel refusing to allow Palestinian civilians to return to their homes in northern Gaza. But a deal was brokered. And this week, we are expecting not just the 3 hostages who were scheduled to come out, but 6 hostages in total. So Arbel Yehud will come out on Thursday along with 2 others, and then those 3 additional hostages will come out on Saturday. And Mika, that is raising hopes that we may finally see American hostage Keith Siegel, a 65-year-old grandfather, released from Hamas captivity sometime this week. You might remember he was taken along with his wife. His wife was released in the first stage of the deal, and he has been in Gaza for 15 months now. As well as those 2 hostage releases, we are expecting President Trump's envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, to make his first trip here since the Trump administration took office. This is a man who was deeply involved in brokering that deal in Qatar. And Witkoff is saying that he is not only going to visit Israel, do the meetings with Prime Minister Netanyahu that you would expect, but that he is also thinking about going into Gaza himself. A ceasefire obviously on, but this is still a dangerous part of the world. So that would be a first for a senior U.S. official.
All right, NBC's Raf Sanchez, thank you so much. We greatly appreciate your reporting. And Mika, you brought up before about talking to a cabinet member in the Trump administration. We've also seen Jamie Dimon and other people just talk when they talk about, for instance, tariffs. Most see it as an opening bid. And there and there have been many people around Donald Trump that say it's the opening bid. In fact, Donald Trump reportedly told the Senate Republicans last weekend that he doesn't want to, quote, tax people. He doesn't want to put the tariffs on people, but he will if he has to. But he also suggested to the Senate Republicans that these are opening bids. We see that in the Middle East. Of course, it's a non-starter in the Middle East if you look at Saudi Arabia and all the things that they want to do by extending the Abraham Accords. That cannot be done if Gaza is, quote, cleared out. They know that. But also fascinating what happened overnight regarding tariffs and Colombia. Again, we saw the opening bid, and then we saw the negotiations there, and it's fascinating. I think we're going to see this with a lot more countries, the use of tariffs as a, quote, opening bid in negotiations.